Good Thursday afternoon, everybody. I'm meteorologist Tim Pandajis here with your Atlantic tropical update. And today we're not talking about any named storms. Well, we've got post-tropical Nicholas, but nothing new out there. Two investigative areas, two tropical waves, 95 and 96L. Today is September 16th, 2021. Although we are past the peak of hurricane season and well past the duration of the season being halfway through, 50% of all tropical activity occurs past this date. So we've literally got half the season left, squeezed into just a month and a half or so of time before the season wraps on up. 2.5 months as we go towards the end of November. All right, let's talk about post-tropical Nicholas right now. Post-tropical just means it's lost its tropical characteristics. Right now you can call it pretty much a remnant low. It's sitting and meandering over central coastal Louisiana. Moving north at 2 miles an hour. Still some showers associated with it, but hardly any wind at all. Now, there are three other waves we're watching here, two of which, as we mentioned yesterday, have high chances at developing, and they're battling over who will be named first. Next two names are Odette and Peter. There's also another wave coming off the African coastline here. Low chances of this developing. 10% within 48 hours, 20% within 5 days. Both of these waves, 95 and 96L, 70% chance within the next 48 hours. As I mentioned, if we look at the name list overall, we've cleared 2 columns with 14 names. Next up is 15 and 16, Odette and Peter. Let's start off with the wave that's closest to the United States, and this is Invest 96L. By the way, Invest means investigative area. 96, just a number. We rotate through 90 to 99 and then start back forward. The L means it's in the Atlantic Basin. If it were in the Pacific or the Eastern Pacific, it would have an E at the end of it. Here it is, very broad, kind of open wave out in the southeastern portions, just off the southeast coast, I should say, in the Atlantic. And overall, since yesterday, you can't really tell much difference, except when you look at it on visible. Yesterday, we were struggling to find some minor spins within this wave overall, but you look at it now, and you could certainly see a broad rotation in this, and even a closer look, you can see that broad circulation right here. Still dealing with a little bit of wind shear, it looks like. The low-level center looks to be exposed a little bit, or the low-level circulation. Most of the convection or thunderstorm activity is displaced slightly off to the north and northeast. Now, when we did yesterday's video, their Hurricane Hunter aircraft was going out to investigate it. They found what we were talking about yesterday. It was just a disorganized area of showers and thunderstorms. Now again, this afternoon, they're just about to enter it for a secondary mission to see if there's been any changes since the initial mission yesterday. So we'll see what they find later on this afternoon, and if it is starting to develop or get a little more organized and they bump up those development chances. But modeling on this does look to keep it safely off the United States, although very close to the Outer Banks in North Carolina. So at minimum, we're dealing with rough surf, rip current risk through the upcoming weekend, maybe some coastal erosion if the system grows large enough. Certainly some of the outermost wind bands and rain showers could make it up and over the Outer Banks, but right now it would have to develop very quickly for that to happen. As it lifts north and eventually northeast, a lot of the models do like it developing at that point, but it'll be well out over the open Atlantic and not going to be impacting anybody. So that's the good news there. Now, the global models on everything here do show it sort of starting to kind of gather itself together. It's got a lot of fuel to work with here. The ocean temperatures are very warm, and if you look here, the darker reds, that is the flow, I'm looking for the word here, the Gulf Stream. There we go, the Gulf Stream that's bringing up the warm waters, and if it tracks over that, it could have slightly greater odds. That's also where we have the deeper ocean heat content. That warm water extends down to a depth with that current coming up from the south, lifting northward, so that gives it that little extra jump. All right, let's now compare the global models here. GFS, European. Yellow's GFS, red is European. The circles and lines are isobars, lines of equal pressure. Now, when they're close together and closed off, it's a closed center of circulation. When they're packed tightly together, there's a tight pressure gradient, meaning the winds are stronger, the system overall is stronger. Right here, the models are kind of ahead of things, already showing it as a closed low, which obviously it's not. We just looked at it on satellite imagery, and it is certainly not. Hurricane hunters may say something different once they actually get into it, but as it looks right now, not a closed low. But by the time we get towards tomorrow morning, this thing's sitting just off the coast of Hatteras, North Carolina. only about 100 miles offshore at most. And then it starts to develop a little bit more once it moves northeast of there. A very large system at this point. And then watch what happens here. It's very interesting as we go through the weekend and straight through next week. It's sitting over here in the North Atlantic, kind of meandering, but remaining quite strong at this point as well. And look down to the south. That could be what maybe 95L, either Odette or Peter, whichever one develops first, well to the south there and even south of Bermuda. Now let's jump over to the other tropical wave, Invest 95L. This one's way out in the middle of the Atlantic, in a place called the Main Development Region, MDR. This has got a 70% chance and an 80% chance within 5 days. If you remember yesterday, those chances were 80 and 90, so chances have gone down a little bit because of how it looks on satellite presentation. The wave is kind of opened up. Yesterday it was a little more centralized. Now it's very broad and elongated as it's pushing off to the west very fast. Look at the speed, nearly 30 miles an hour. So that could be detrimental to it overall. It's out racing its convection trying to bubble on up. You can also see it here on the visible satellite imagery. Not so much of an evident spin anymore like we had yesterday as it's racing westwards, the convection kind of all spread out north to south. Modeling on this pretty much due west. Remember yesterday we talked about that big broad area of the Azores high developing, the ridging, and that's forcing that westward track. Where that ridging breaks down, if it's not expanding all the way off to the west, we could see it turn off to the northwest, which some of the models do in the long term here. In fact, let's show you here on the GFS and the European global models. Doesn't do much with this over the next couple of days. It's going to take a while as it transits the ocean, the Atlantic, and then by the time it's getting to the north of the leewards, GFS is still liking this. European is still a broad open wave at this point as we get into early next week. GFS does strengthen it, and notice it takes it to the north, away from any land, could take it near Bermuda, but at this point in time, the end of a week out from now, by next Thursday afternoon, has a pretty potent system here sitting over the middle parts of the Atlantic. Will it be there a week from now? Probably not. It's going to change. Models do change, especially this far out in time, but as of right now, it looks like it may stay out in the upper Atlantic. So my final thoughts here. Chances are still high that we see a new named storm soon. Bets are going to be on 96L, which is just off the coast of the United States. That'll get the name Odette. And models are not keen on developing Invest 95L, at least for right now, until it gets a little bit farther to the west. And the Gulf right now looks pretty quiet in the medium range. That's good news because so far this season, we've had numerous landfalls in the Gulf Coast, and even over the last 2 years, we've had 14 landfalls along the Gulf Coast. So hopefully we don't add to that anytime soon. Any changes, any developments, or you've got any questions, let me know. Twitter, Instagram, and on Facebook. David Paul up next this evening. We'll see you tomorrow.